field for as long as anybody can remember, who might have been able to do something about this corruption that he knew nothing about, et cetera, and he's still there. So it's just the elephant in the room. It's going to continue to be in the room until something more dramatic happens.
Brendan Pope, what about House Democrats? I mean, you have folks like Kelly Cassidy speaking up, but you don't have anyone mentioning Mike Madigan's name, saying he is the problem.
Well, yeah, I think a big part of that is they're trying to walk on eggshells a little bit. There's still a lot of politics in play here, but it's sad to see because we're talking about a rape in Champaign. Like, this is some serious stuff here. And like you just said, it really speaks to the corruption angle that people have been talking about, but still kind of a little bit of a code of silence happening when it comes to these politicians.
Dave McKinney, there was some speculation in another media outlet about what that rape in Champaign could be referring to. Does your reporting lead you to a similar conclusion?
Well, I mean, this information, I mean, while tantalizing and while you know, the Inspector General appears to be looking at it, I think the big missing piece of that is that there's no evidence that this state employee that was facing disciplinary action knew anything about it or kept silent about it. That's the missing link here. I mean, it is a rape in Champaign, yes it is, but you know, you look up the crime statistics, there are about 75 rapes every year in Champaign and Urbana, and so pick any one of those. You know, did he know about one of them? I mean, that's the open question.
And are there more public officials that this email could touch? Will we find that more folks knew about it than are letting on now?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, what is striking about this is that there were former Governor Pat Quinn's chief of staff, his legislative affairs director, his senior advisor, those two guys that were on the email, neither one has returned phone calls. The gentleman who was the source of this, all of this, the state worker that was in trouble.
His name is Forrest Ashby.
Forrest Ashby from Quincy. He hasn't responded other than just with a no comment, I believe, in the Tribune. And so there's this just big wall of silence about what went on here.
And you get the feeling that between some of these people, they have to know what this is referring to, but they're just not talking. Marianne Ahern, what does the average Illinoisan need to know about the race for Senate president?
Oh, Senate President this coming Sunday. So John Cullerton is retiring as of Sunday. It's a very powerful position, one of the four top leaders. Right now we're down to two finalists. It is Senator Kimberly Lightford as well as Don Harmon.
Both from this area. Don Harmon from the western suburbs, Lightford also.
Right, Maywood and Oak Park. Right, she's from Maywood, he's from Oak Park. He has a much bigger campaign war chest. He has also contributed to many more of his colleagues over the years. She has devoted a lot of her time as a state senator to education and education issues. She would be the first woman. She'd be the first African-American woman. We, of course, have Hetty Emil Jones, who is an African-American state Senate president. But it is down to the big question, coming back to Governor Pritzker, who does he support? He won't say, but several of his allies are supporting Kimberly Lightford, so you get the impression that he would prefer her. Don Harmon, though, has worked it hard, and he has also, perhaps it comes back to, in the primary that Governor Pritzker ran, Harmon supported his colleague in the Senate, Daniel Biss. Is this a little payback that the Pritzker is not really on board, we believe, with Harmon?
Dave McKinney, are there ramifications for the way the Senate is run, for the kind of policy that could come out of the Senate, if it should be Lightford or Harmon?
Well, I mean, ideologically, I think both of these two are probably pretty similar. They both have similar credentials, been in the Senate about the same length of time. But I think that, you know, Marianne's right. I mean, this is a very powerful position. You think back over time that, you know, Emil Jones, Pate Phillip, Phil Rock, these are all people who were highly influential. They are the ones that the governor depends upon to get an agenda through there. And I think that Harmon, you know, Harmon is, he may be on the outs with Pritzker, but don't forget Harmon is the one who helped Pritzker put this graduated income tax issue on the ballot, which is crucial. So, and today I believe Pritzker was asked, you know, pin you down, who are you for? And he said, yeah, these other people that may be my, you know, people close to me, they're not speaking for me.
Dave, Steve Daniels, how would a new Senate president deal with the federal probes that have hit the Senate? I mean, Sandoval is gone, but Cullerton is still around. Tim Cullerton, that is. Mm-hmm. Tom Cullerton, I'm sorry.
Right.
There's so many.
I think that right now, I mean, with Cullerton and Madigan, there was the sense that Cullerton was sort of the junior leader to the speaker. That may or may not have been true on every issue, but that was sort of the general sense. Into today's situation in which the speaker is so politically weakened in a sense and on a number of issues really can't be seen as taking the lead. The Senate president has become a really, really important leader in the state in terms of getting things through, in terms of the important issues. I think you're going to see the Senate taking the lead on a whole bunch of things that in the past the House would have. So this is going to be really important who emerges as the Senate president, and then do they have everybody behind them, or are there some hard feelings?
Brandon Pope, you want to wager a guess as to who it's going to be come Sunday?
You know what? I think at this point it's tough to choose because you need 30 votes to get through that first round. And so far from what I'm hearing, no one has that 30 votes locked up yet. So if you get to a second round, it's anybody's guess at that point, right?
Seems like a lot of maneuvering going to take place over the next 48 hours. Let's move on to some city news. Mayor Lori Lightfoot scolds some aldermen over language used to describe LGBTQ contracting. Alderman Scott Waguespack pushes a ban that would outlaw styrofoam and single-use plastic containers in Chicago restaurants. Activists are concerned about an agreement between Chicago police and immigration officials, but Mayor Lightfoot says it's only to combat terrorism and human and drug trafficking. And there's an updated report this week on the Obama Presidential Center. Marianne, why did it get so testy over a seemingly mundane resolution to study how many contracts are going out to LGBTQ businesses?
Right, and it was black aldermen and the mayor, which was also kind of interesting. And when there were questions of, well, wait a second, how are we going to know if they're kidding, lying, if they really aren't gay and they're getting these breaks? That set her off. That was enough. And when she spoke, it came from the heart. But it also, this is a gal who's a former federal prosecutor. She certainly knows how to do a close. She knows how to give an argument. It stopped folks dead in their tracks. And the final vote, 47-1, for the study.
Right, and I believe Alderman Burnett, who was the person initially opposed to this, voted in her favor. Brandon Pope, was this an effective way to maybe tell aldermen, don't cross me?
It was a heartfelt and emotional one. She definitely got the public side on this for sure when she released the video on Twitter. I think what really, brought the emotion to it, Alderman Walter Burnett, you mentioned, she was kind of upset with the references he was making about people frauding the system in a sense. And he used a movie, I Now Pronounce You Chuck and Larry,
right,
to kind of make that example, which, on its face, I think just really is insulting to probably anyone that is homosexual. So, I think in general, it's a study. And right, she was upset that we're just so resistant right now to data being looked at, because you need the data to have even a federal look at having any sort of set-asides.
Steve Daniels, what's the data on banning single-use plastic or styrofoam at fast food restaurants?
I don't know. Do you?
Does it work?
I mean, it's common sense. It's that is not an environmentally beneficial practice, right? Styrofoam, plastic. I mean, we're seeing a lot of efforts in this city and other cities to reduce plastic usage that I think most people can get on board with. It's going to have to be done in a thoughtful way, because you do need some kind of containers.
I mean, is it going to be a financial burden on businesses?
Well, some have already said that, yes. And the Illinois Restaurant Association is concerned that it will be costly. A part of this ordinance is on request. If you do ask, there will be some provided for you, plastic forks and spoons and that kind of thing. But it's the smaller place. It's the mom and pop place that might not even have dishwashers because they're just, Chicken Planet, one of my favorite joints downtown that we go to. We stop there.
Yeah. Chicken Planet?
Chicken Planet.
Wow, I haven't been there.
A plug.
All right.
Put you on.
We stopped there to ask him about the styrofoam and all that. And the gal said, we're thinking about it. We're the owner. She said, we're thinking about it. We know that we want to be more eco-friendly, but it's also, then we're going to have to bring in dishwashers, plates, silverware, and all of that for the folks that eat here.
Yeah.
The big chains would probably say the same, but it might be more adverse effect on smallers.
A lot of those recyclable options just cost more. That's really what it comes down to. I mean, styrofoam's cheap. It's easily disposable.
Although if you add in, kind of environmental costs, the financial costs to add up. Dave McKinney, when are we going to see ground broken for the Obama Presidential Center on the South Side? There was a new assessment put out today saying, not surprisingly, that it would have an adverse impact on the Boulevard system.
Well, that is the question, isn't it? I mean, this thing has dragged on and on and on, and it's striking. I mean, Obama himself has come out and shown up at a few of these things from time to time, to advocate, but I can't imagine what it is like for him. This was the place he grew up in politically, to kind of just see the slow walking that's going on with this, and the uncertainty. Really, this could be an asset for the entire city, and it just is sitting there.
Well, there's numerous federal reviews. There's concerns about displacement of residents.
Yeah, Barack Obama is seeing at this point the community organizing that
That he did.
that he did himself. He's now kind of on the other side of it now. He's seeing people pushing, for affordable housing, and seeing him as the force coming in, pushing people out. And that battle right there has really just kind of stalled this whole entire thing, as well as Jackson Park, a historical site with, being part of the park system. Those environmental activists too, they don't want to see any part of that torn up. You have people that live in the area, don't want to see streets ripped up and all the construction going on there. It's really taken a long time to get this thing going, and at this point, who knows what it's going.
We
right?
still don't
Go
have
to
a start
Hawaii
date.
at this point. Some people are saying.
His community organizing background, though, does make it so that he really can't raise too much of a fuss about this. I mean, it's the kind of thing he would have probably been agitating on way back in the day.
And didn't he this week also donate another $1 million? He put in his
did.
own $1 million.
And Nike donated a little bit as well. Let's move on to some other political headlines. Cook County Board President Tony Preckwinkle wants more control of the county's health care system, including the power to appoint the head of its governing board. Recreational marijuana customers in Cook County will pay an additional 3% tax on their purchase. President Donald Trump made a visit to a swing state just to our north, and politicians like Illinois House Speaker Michael Madigan and 14th Ward Alderman Ed Burke are paying big legal fees out of their campaign funds. Marianne Ahern, is County Board President Preckwinkle trying to engage in a power play here by taking control of this massive Cook County health system?
Well, it is her. I mean, this is the biggest employer of the county. She does want to keep an eye on what's going on. It is also the thorn. It's the plus and the minus. So, of course, she wants to keep up and make sure that she's in control. I don't find that necessarily that odd. Maybe I'm wrong.
I mean, she wants the board to have a say over who the next president is. I mean, did they not have a say over that in the past?
I think it has more to do with, once there is a president, that the board would take a more active role in overseeing.
Maybe the finances, the budget, because they're worried about.
I mean, they would be, and they certainly would had in the past been part of bringing in a president of the system. But it is what I guess the question that hasn't been answered is what was so dreadfully wrong that he had to be pushed out, and that she needs to take more of an active role about. Obviously, they've had trouble with reimbursement on Medicaid and things like that everybody has trouble with. It just, the dots haven't been connected, at least as far as I've seen, in terms of what exactly is so terribly wrong there that needs more hands-on management.
So there's still unanswered questions there. Marianne, this week you were up in Milwaukee for the rally for President.
Thrillwalkie, Paris.
Thrillwalkie, is that what you called it? The President Trump rally. Does it seem that his supporters there care about all this impeachment news that has come out?
I think the impeachment news has revved them up more. Yeah, there was a huge crowd. Folks, a dozen or so camped out overnight from 2 p.m. the night before, 2 in the afternoon. So more than 24 hours waited to get inside. The Panther Arena was packed. There were another several thousand outside. I've been to a couple of them now. It was sort of the same script. There wasn't really much new other than some lines about impeachment. But yeah, no, there was
a lot about appliances and dishwashers.
But isn't it wild in Wisconsin that one of Trump's big victories there supposedly was the Foxconn project,
Yeah.
and the thousands of jobs that was going to bring, and yet it's just this dusty vacant stretch of land where nothing has happened.
With $3 billion in incentives promised.
Yeah.
Right. But still, when you drive up 94, there's a lot of other.
A lot of development there, no question.
Amazon, IKEA. I mean, you just can't help but see a lot of new growth going on that we're not seeing necessarily coming across to our place with taxes.
Well, there's a lot going on. The president has a lot of legal fees he has to pay off, which makes me segue into another discussion about legal fees. Dave McKinney, it's within the law for these public officials like Ed Burke, Mike Madigan, Jeffrey Tobalski, the mayor of McCook, Cook County Commissioner, to use campaign funds to pay their legal fees for a criminal defense. But is that morally right?
Well, I mean, there used to be a time when politicians could go into their campaign funds and use it to build swimming pools in their backyard. I mean, they could buy jewelry, they could do anything they wanted to, and then the state put the brakes on that, I believe, in the late 90s. Now, legal fees were exempted from that, and so what you see over and over again, I remember with George Ryan, this was an issue. When he got into trouble, he dipped into his campaign fund, drained it all the way down. The same way with Rod Blagojevich, drained it all the way down. There's no prohibition on them using legal fees, and it's really kind of a good barometer for us in the reporting world to be able to gauge kind of who's in trouble and who's not, just based on that level of activity.
A lot of money being paid. We counted more than $400,000 from Mike Madigan's fund. Same with Ed Burke. The thing is, if you look at all of Mike Madigan's political funds, he's got a cool $21 million sitting there. So he's not going to run out of money anytime soon.
He's got a war chest.
275,000 of that 400,000 went to the settlement of the sexual harassment lawsuit too. So it can be a little misleading. I mean, again, that would raise questions about, is that appropriate to be dipping into campaign funds to pay off a lawsuit or settle a lawsuit where you were accused of wrongdoing?
I mean, if I'm at home and I'm writing out my check for $25 to send to a politician, I'm not thinking it's going to go to that. And that's the question.
Although Madigan is still getting big checks. He raised $5 million in the last quarter alone.
Right.
Yep. Unions really gave a lot in this last little bit.
Why do you think that is?
That's a good question. I mean, I assume they think he's still in charge. He's the guy in charge. He's the power in Springfield, and that's
he
what
is. I mean, I don't think we can say he's not in charge.
No.
I mean, he
is.
definitely had some dinks, but I wouldn't say he wasn't in charge.
Right, and I guess that's what I would just conclude, is that they believe what seems evident.
All right, let's move on to the business beat. Chicago Tribune offers voluntary buyouts 2 months after the hedge fund Alden Global Capital becomes its largest stakeholder. WGN America's owner Nexstar Media Group plans to launch a primetime 3-hour newscast to compete with national networks, and emails released by Boeing may lead to higher payouts for 737 MAX victims' families. Steve Daniels, when the Tribune writes a letter saying we're offering a buyout to anyone with 8+ years of experience, does that mean they're going to slash a lot of jobs?
Yeah, I mean, what it particularly means is they're going to be getting rid of a certain kind of worker, right? Somebody who's been there a while, who's maybe built up some knowledge, but gets paid more if you stick around long enough. Eventually, even cost of living raises will make you a relatively highly paid employee. That's where the money is, and they don't want to. In the past, they put out these general buyouts, and sort of you raise your hand and you go out and take it, and anybody can take it, and they can turn you down and say, well, no, we'd like to keep you on. But in this time, it was a little odd to me that only people of this vintage can take this, and obviously it tells you that, hey, if you don't take it, you're probably going to get the axe anyway.
Brandon Pope, at the same time, its former sister company, WGN, announces it's going to marshal a new national nightly newscast, going to hire 120 or so journalists. Do you view that as promising news for journalism in Chicago?
Promising news for journalism in Chicago in terms of people are seeing Chicago as a place to have a hub for a national network. WGN America's plan, from what I'm reading, is they want to compete with CNN, MSNBC, and those other cable networks, and they believe that the company has the manpower and staffing to be able to bring that national scale.
Well, they own affiliate networks in cities all over the country.
So many places, so they might be able to, and they're also offering more jobs too and hiring as well in-house. I'm assuming producers and people behind the scenes and anchors and reporters and stuff like that. So more jobs is always a good thing.
Mary Ahern, are you worried about what's happening at the Tribune and the loss of so much institutional knowledge? What that would mean for coverage of all the stuff that goes on in the city?
What do we all do each day but to
We
get
start
up,
our day with the paper.
With the paper, and of course with WBEZ.
Yeah.
Especially because they're killing it on all these stories that we have to keep an
that's
eye.
nice of you to say, but can you think of a single media outlet in the country that has undergone, draconian job
much
cuts
change.
that has come out stronger? No, it doesn't happen that way. These owners come in, they bleed these places dry of real estate, of workers, and then eventually they bail.
And with no real knowledge of the industry. That's probably the most
I mean, there's no
frustrating part.
civic-
And you know, it's interesting. This week, did a final interview with John Cullerton as he's leaving, and one of the things that he had to say was, there's so many fewer reporters covering Springfield, and there's so many fewer reporters from smaller towns that have a connection to Springfield. So when something happens that's sort of, you know, maybe you'd call it sexy or, you know, controversial, whatever, that we all glom onto right away, and he says, you aren't there covering the mundane, you know, how we got to this bill or whatever else has happened, because there's just not enough people. So of course the politicians notice it. You know, we're not around to keep an eye on them all the time.
Well, and don't you think that also drives down voter interest in what's going on in government, because they don't know,
Right.
and so then, you know, nobody's voting anymore, and that it just is a vicious
Yeah, the days of
cycle.
having a State House reporter have declined. Just
Well, I've been to
so fast.
Springfield many times, and Dave McKinney, that was your home base.
Yeah.
That room, that newsroom, was chock full of reporters, and now
30, 40 people, and
That's
now
been
they're like
vacant.
less than a half dozen.
right. Steve Daniels, these emails with Boeing, workers there saying the 737 was designed by monkeys overseen by goblins or whatever it was. What is it? What's going to happen to the company after this?
What's going to happen to the company is a very good question. I don't know that we can say that right now. I mean, obviously they have a new CEO, right? And they're going to have to take. I think there's real questions as to whether the 737 MAX is ever going to fly at this point.
It's supposed to be approved in the next couple months by the FAA.
The airlines have made it clear. You know, American and United have made it clear they don't expect anything till the summer, and it just keeps, you know, extending on. But I think there are real questions with investors at this point that this thing may never happen. Apart from that, the amazing mismanagement that occurred at one of America's, you know, preeminent companies that has fallen into this situation is sort of jaw-dropping.
But then how about the governmental oversight? I mean, there's just so many things that we need answered with regard to this story. But we're out of time. Marianne Ahern, Dave McKinney, Steve Daniels, Brandon Pope, thank you all. Drive safely. And we'll see you on the next edition of the Week in Review. I'm Paris Schutz. Does anyone want to talk about this Houston Astros scandal? Any local baseball franchise going to be touched by this?
Well, the White Sox. People are talking about the White Sox now.
Seriously?
Yeah, Tony La Russa. That he's been accused of doing sign stealing.
McDowell.
Yeah.
Remember
Blackjack
Wow.
McDowell, the
Yeah,
pitcher.
he was the one who said he was aware that the system existed in Old Comiskey Park.
Yeah, said they had
And
a
La
A
Russa set it
videotape
up.
system.
Yeah.
From a film,
To steal
camera in
signs.
center field.
Oh, my.
The Gatorade sign. They had a backup picture blinking, a light or something to detect.
Like Morse code.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices. Robert Clifford is the honoree of this year's Illinois Bar Foundation's annual fundraising event that raises money to enhance the availability of justice for those without attorneys throughout the state.